connected to mobile device. Followed by the pound key. Thank you. You are now entering the conference room. To exit the conference room, press ** for help. Participant number 3.
Alright, we're talking about Nekudat Tamsis, which is really a very phenomenal union. I'd like to discuss it a little bit. Alright, so that's where we're going to start. The line begins with the parentheses, with open paren. The Rebbe explained that in chochmah you have the nekuda. Although in this nekuda is included all the protein that will eventually surface, but it's there in a very camouflage, in a very subtle manner. There's no mitzias, no identifiable presence. There's only the nekuda, which means it gives presents a purity of sechel. And then when this nekuda is brought down, and you bring out all the content with it, and it's being elaborated with a lot of explanations, a lot of examples, a lot of different pertinence, different function effects that this sechel has, then the purity of the nekuda is kind of lost, and you have a whole elaboration, the tziyus of sechel.
So the what's kind of lost? The nekuda itself?
The dakus, the subtlety of the nekuda is lost. Do I have to repeat it inside? We discuss it. Okay, the line before this. Okay. The more the union is understood, so the aspect of dakus means the refinement, the subtlety of the Iyar, sichli, is misalem, is concealed. It hides. And it's no longer at all similar to the way it is in the Nekudas Haskolah. Again, we have to reintroduce and remind ourselves of the meaning of the word Iyar. And this will help us also in the next section called the Nekudas Tamsis. As is mentioned all the time, Sechel is an emanation from the Nefesh, which means Sechel is telling you the truth of what the Nefesh is. Sechel is not a new interpretation of the world due to the exposure to the world. This is not what Sechel is. It is an emanation, it is an expression into world, but expression of nefesh into world, and its motivator and its force. The force behind it is not the world, not the solicitor, but the supplier, the nefesh. This is what sechel is. Which is why. Which is why there is this element in Sechel that's called Dakus HaSechel. With the Sechel, this is very subtle because it is fully representative, and it is the impact of the Etzem itself, of the truth itself. Then, however, when it gets interpreted and brought down into a worldly context and grasped, so to speak, with the hands of Sechel, then this refinement is lost, because it's no longer purely emanating from the nefesh. It is now applicable, seeing from a worldly perspective, from a Metzius perspective. So it becomes Metzius. It's no longer just the inference of Sechel. It is the Metzius of Sechel. Okay, now we'll go into the next line that begins with the parentheses. V'yachar kach, but however, afterwards, after that the whole Sechel is understood and it is fully elaborated in Havana Hasod, there's another stage, what's called Nakuda Tamtis. The Nakuda of Tamtis. Tamtis means the resultant significance of the Sechel. What is it about? She'achar ha'hasoga, that comes first after the full comprehension. And the Rebbe explains where does this come from and how does that come to be recognized. Who and that is that when after that he understands and fully comprehends his inyan Sechli, b'chol haprotim sheboi, with all its details, harehu mekasher es atzmi, then he comes back and he connects himself, trog zich zu, brings himself closer to the Sechel, to the essence of this inyan Sechli, of this intelligence, Eich shehu musog mikol ha'asogis haprotis. He focuses in on the nekuda, on the etzem ha'seichel, but from a perspective of how is this seichel clarified from all the inyanim that were presented in explaining it. This is called nekuda tamtis. In other words, it is not a nekuda that is devoid of explanation. It is a nekuda that is actually drawn from the explanations, but not the explanation itself. It's a nekuda seichel that is explained by all of these explanations. So here is where
it's not the seichel per se. It's the
No.
I didn't hear what it was.
Okay. It is not the Sechel that is being created by the explanations. It is the real Sechel, as it emanates from the Nefesh. But after it has been fully digested and explained on a Sechel level.
This is the Nakuda Tamsis. So it's as if to say, after the initial Nakuda became a whole array, a whole development, remains or comes back a new Nakuda, or the same Nakuda after the fact.
Okay, so let me explain where does this Nakuda come from. He says, Etrog Zichzu, he brings himself to connect. And let's him in Sechli, to the essence of the Sechli. The etzem in Sechli, that's what we said before. The Sechel itself is a neshama, is a nefesh emanation. It is true because the nefesh is true. It is not true because it's being proven from a peripheral perspective, from a worldly perspective. Please don't stop it.
Sorry.
It is true because the nefesh is true. This is what substantiates it. However, it is then expressed in a sechel different form.
Which is to say, dealing with definition.
Ultimately different definition and examples and the full elaboration of that sechel, how that manifests itself in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So it is applying nefesh, the truth of nefesh, to the world.
Sure. We said this is where it loses the duck, which it had already.
So it loses the dakas.
Okay.
However, because this is the person who is learning it, he recognizes that this is his sechel. So he, after all this understanding, he delves back into the sechel from a personal perspective. Meaning, what does this actually mean to me? How is this apply? How is this define my world? So he has both him here. He has the nekudas sechel, and he also has the elaboration and the explanations. Now, elaboration and explanations could be something external, but he does not let it. He does not let go of the sechel. It is his sechel.
So this, what does it mean to me, leads him back to the Nakuda.
To Nakuda.
And here we're calling that Tamsis or Nakuda?
Okay, so this is called Tamsis. Why? Because not Tamsis, not Tamsis or Nakuda, Tamsis or the Hasoga. After that, all is elaborated. What is this reveal? What is this explain? This is called Tamsis HaSoga.
What's this word Tamsis mean?
Tamsis means the result.
So it starts to sound like a bechain. Like what's in it for me? What does it mean to me?
No. That's too far. That's much further out. Thank you. That's much further out. Not what it means to me, but where does it come from? What does it explain?
So back to the truth of it.
Right.
And which does not sound like the result, but getting back to the point of it.
It is. Okay. Let me put it in this. The point is something which is truth, which is my truth. So even though now I have elaborated on it and created a whole structure, I still know that this is my own truth.
Oh, that it becomes my truth is the kind of result here. This is the Nakuda sort of within.
That's right. So that from this my truth, I go back to the Hasoga and see how I find myself in this Hasoga.
Got it. Mm-hmm.
This is called Nakuda Tamsis. This is what the Lashon in my Harihu Makasheres Atzmoi. He attaches himself to Gzichzu Eletzemu Inyan Sichli. What does he bring himself to? He can attach himself to the Etzem Sichel, to the essence of the Sechel. Which means he now re-identifies, reconnects how this Sechel has to do with the truth of his own nefesh. How this is true to him.
Would it be okay to think of it as the original Nakuda becoming something he relates, his personal orientation?
No. Okay, so that's
sort of becoming personalized, right?
The Nakuda originally was completely his.
Okay. But undigested or unmanifested.
That's right. Undeveloped.
Yes.
Now he goes back to the Nakuda and finds how this is all explained and clarified from the entire elaboration. This is called Nekudat Tamtzis. This is a very powerful moment. Because on the one hand, this is a Nekuda, on the other hand, it is fully understood. It's not just a Nekuda coming from a source unknown. This is when it becomes personal, this is when it becomes effective and becomes a guide in life, so to speak. This is why the expression that it's Mekasheres Atzmo attaches himself, which means he recognizes this whole Sechel, this is really me. It really belongs to me, it really means something to me. And I ought to find myself how I am affected by the Sechel. Not just to know the Sechel on a Sechel level, but to know it on a personal level.
Is this what we usually often call das? It's now.
Well, das is, from this comes das eventually, but this is still in the Sechel.
Okay.
This is Sechel still at the Bina level. Tamtzis means the result. What result of what? Result of the elaboration. Nekudat Tamtzis means the result of the elaboration. The Oz, okay, let's continue. The line begins with the word musag. He actually identifies this seichel, how it is emanating, how it's affected by the entire elaboration. How all that coalesces to bring out the clarity of the seichel. The Oz, and then Choizer umeir bozeh bechinas dakos hoir. Then returns back umeir bozeh and shines therein the dakos hoir, the subtlety of the oir. Where does oir come in all of a sudden over here? We're talking about seichel. The answer is because this is when the Sechel it shows out how personal it is. Personal means that there's a personal reality. This is Oyer. Because this personal reality, this is that which was given to him in his neshama. He understands it from the perspective of the truth of his neshama, the truth of who he is, rather than what experience he has and how he can benefit from this. The purity of the Sechel, and that's when the Dakus Ha'oyer, the Bechinas Dakus Ha'oyer, comes back. And the Rebbe explains it even more. Liyois being that, Shazehu being that this is a state, this experience is K'moi Sha'ispashus the Bino. This is a state where the Ispashus of Bino, the full elaboration and the broad and the expanse of Bino, Bo Libchinas Ayin, comes back to the Bechina of Ayin. Why is it called Ayin? Because this is where, when Bina is in full glory, it is a whole structure, and it argues its point. But now that he came back to the truth, to this personal truth, You don't need all. That is completely irrelevant. It is a fundamental truth. So he took the whole Bina and drew and showed and recognized how this actually brings out the fundamental truth. And then the whole Bina is irrelevant. It goes back to the Bechinas AYIN. Because what is the Bina explaining? Bina explains a truth that Bina cannot even grasp. It goes back to the Bechinas AYIN.
Becomes irrelevant, sort of disappears, no longer a factor?
It doesn't disappear because he went through the whole experience with, but it's no longer relevant. It's not, your Sechel is not based on the Bina.
Okay.
Now you go back to the Nakuda and you see the truth of the Nakuda itself. After the full elaboration. And this is why comes back to the word Oyr. Because this truth is present only because of the truth of the Nefesh itself. That's why it's called Oyr. The impact of the Nefesh. So then it is when the Hispasha the Bina Bo Libchinas AYIN Liyoid Libchinas Nekuda Lavad to reconnect itself and to be in a state of Nekuda Bilavad, only the point, only the central point. What is the Nekuda? What is the truth about it? Shenishla Bozeh Ho'erech V'Reichav, where the Oirech V'Reichav, the full expanse of it. Oirech means a length and Reichav means broad. Oirech means all the aspects that it touches, and Reichav means is the broad explanation of all of these things. The elaboration, the substantiation. Is Nishla. Nishla means it's negated. You don't need it. You have the Nakuda, you have the truth itself. The whole Bechinas. And this is the Bechina, this is the term that describes it. V'chakam bebina. V'chakam bebina. The approaching says, Hovei bechochmah v'chakam bebina. Chakam bebina means bring out chochmah through bina. Chochmah and bina are two different levels completely of seichel. But in this nekuda, this is when it's chakam bebina, because he identifies the truth of the chochmah, the richness of the chochmah, but through bina. So even though now he gets the nekuda back on the koim, however, still, it is not in a state of ilu, of superiority, to the same extent, the way it is in the Nekudat HaChochmah. It is not as refined and as subtle as it is in the Nekudat HaChochmah. Why? The Nekudat HaTamtzis. Because when there's a Tamtzis, Bo Ha'oir Sichli B'murgosh. So then the Oir Sichli, it's true, it's Oir Sichli. It's talking about the truth of Sechel, but B'murgosh, it is being, there is a tangibility to it. Or B'mitzias Yoser. It's more of a mitzias. It is not merely the impact of the etzem, no, there is a whole consequence. Memele, and therefore, ein ze bechinas dakos etzem oir mamash. Therefore, even the dakos, the subtlety in this, it is not the subtlety of etzem oir mamash, the essence of the oir itself. K'mei bin kuz ha-chochmah, the way it is in kuz ha-chochmah. For greater clarity, the Rebbe says, V'hiyois being the Nekuda ha-chochmah, because the Nekuda of chochmah, he bechinas ayin shekedem hayesh. This is the beginning of AYIN that precedes the yesh. ונקודת התמצית היא מה שהיא נעשה, שהיש נעשה AYIN. In chochmah, this is when the AYIN is before the yesh. Because the tamtit is when the yesh becomes AYIN. What's the difference? It's AYIN. The difference is that when you have AYIN that precedes the yesh, the whole basis over here is the AYIN. That was the truth of the AYIN itself. You don't have any tangible means by which to grasp it and to substantiate it. It is true because it's true of in itself. Whereas when he said when the yesh becomes AYIN, so even though it's AYIN, but this AYIN, in the back of your mind, you know that this AYIN has a substantiation from yesh. There's a tangibility to it. If challenged, I can explain it. So therefore, this is not with the same refinement, the same brightness and same purity as it is in the Oyachah. Any questions? No. Okay. V'hainu, and that is the yoish, the nekudas, atamtis, bo min hasoga. Being that the nekudas atamtis comes from the hasoga, comes from the full comprehension. Hagam shezeho bitl hasoga. Although that this itself represents the bitl of the hasoga, the negation of the hasoga. Meaning, negation of hasoga meaning this is not what I'm basing my comprehension on, my recognition on. The hasoga only helped me to see the essential truth, but I'm not basing it on this. Nonetheless, it is there.